We are so glad you could join us. I am with Greg Engert, beer director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group, a James Beard Award nominee. The group includes in DuPont Circle, Iron Gate, recently made a prominent best of list in Washingtonian Magazine. Also in Penn Quarter, you have the Partisan and Red Apron. They're connected. Greg, it is always good to see you.
You too.
What do we have on tap this week?
So this week we have a beautiful beer, one of the coolest collaboration beers that I've ever had, from St. Somewhere Brewing Company out of Tarpon Springs, Florida, on the west coast right near Tampa and St. Pete's. It's a collaboration beer called Farmhouse AF, brewed with 24 other of the best farmhouse brewers in the United States. Let's taste it and then talk about the story that goes along with it.
Smells crisp. That's really nice.
Deliciously dry.
Yes.
Citric, herbal, hint of acidity, really, really refreshing. All natural carbonation, as you can see. It's bottle conditioned. Just an amazing, simple but complex beer at the same time, and very delicious. So this beer comes about because every March, Cigar City Brewing Company in Tampa, Florida, has Hunahpu Day, which is where they release Hunahpu Imperial Stout, and they have a huge event surrounding it, and brewers from all over the country and the world come to pour. Also, Green Bench, Chris Johnson, our buddy's brewery down in St. Pete's, does a really cool event called Food for Thought, where there's cool seminars, things like that. I was lucky to be involved with that last year, and that's on the same weekend. So Bob, knowing that there's going to be a lot of great brewers in town, decided he wanted to collaborate, as we often do when we have the opportunity. But he started making a list of who he wanted to get, and it just became too many. So he was like, I'm just going to invite everybody and see what happens. So he invites a bunch of brewers. They all said yes. And on the brew day, there were 24 different brewers there making this beer.
It came to his place.
His place, right. They're all in town for these other two events. So they go up to Tarpon Springs. Yeah, it's amazing. But the coolest part is the beer itself. So they settled on a base, St. Somewhere makes amazing saisons, typically all stainless steel. He doesn't use a lot of adjuncts or barrel aging or anything like that. He likes to make just, straightforward 4-ingredient beers typically. Took that base saison. Every brewer had to bring an ingredient to add to the beer during the whirlpool cycle after the boil. So some people brought ingredients you might expect, like white sage. Some people brought Neo-Mexicanas hops, which are the kind of indigenous hop of the western United States that are kind of wild tasting. Others brought donuts. It was just kind of all over the map. Somebody brought, Underberg, which is that little digestif herbal liqueur. They poured some of that in. They had probably the most interesting one is this guy from Speciation Brewing Company. He brought snow in a cooler from Michigan, which is where the brewery is, and they added all this stuff into the whirlpool. And then the other really cool thing is, they didn't pitch any yeast. Everybody brought 2 of their own bottles of beer that were bottle conditioned with their own house cultures, and so they dumped those into the fermenter. So you had basically bottle dregs of yeast and bacteria and things like that from 24 different breweries. You have the house culture of St. Somewhere that's just in the brewery itself coming together here. And it's funny. So Bob, who knew how it was going to taste? When it first came out, he said it was like they brewed 7 barrels and it was pretty intensely herbal. And so he brewed another batch of the beer just clean, and then blended it in on top and achieved this really great balance. It spent a lot of months in tank to mellow and mature, further bottle condition, and now you have this really great beer. I was talking to Bob about the beer in anticipation of discussing it today, and he said something which I think is very true about collaboration. Collaborative beers, which we've talked about before, it's an opportunity to hang out, trade, insider secrets on brewing, talk about things that have worked, haven't worked, drink a few beers, and it's a bonus if the beer ends up tasting great, you know what I mean? And so in this case, great story, amazing day for these guys, and then a beer that's really outstanding.
What would you pair this with?
So this is a beer that goes with lots of things. Saisons are like the best beer for pairing in general. So on the meat side, I could see doing this with like roast chicken or just like simply prepared chicken thighs, maybe some pork shoulder, sausage, things that are saltier. But what I really like this with, maybe it's the herbal quality and the kind of peppery spice, is with root vegetables. It adds a lot of great flavor. So whether you're doing like squash of any kind, butternut, delicata, acorn squash, roasted beets, carrots, things like that, I think it would be really, really a great accompaniment. For that, you could do, I think, simple pasta dishes. I mentioned sausage or pancetta with like some simple vegetables like spinach, I think would be really great here. I could see doing this with like a chicken pot pie or even a turkey club sandwich as well.
You had me until root vegetables. I like some of the stuff afterwards too. Really cool. Greg, thank you as always. Everyone, please always do drink responsibly, and be sure to bring your thirst next time for another Beer of the Week.